My girlfriend only loved me when my wallet was open, so I closed it and the door behind her. We'd been dating for about 3 months when she asked me to cover her phone bill because she was short that month. It was $80. I paid it without thinking about it because that's what you do for someone you care about. The next month she asked again, then she stopped asking and just told me. She'd say my phone bill is due Tuesday, like it was understood I was handling it. I never agreed to pay her phone bill every month. She just decided I was doing it. Then it was her car insurance. She said her premium went up and I covered 2 months. On the 3rd month, she didn't mention paying it herself. It just stayed on my list. Then she needed new tires. Then her laptop broke. Then her rent was short by $300 because she overspent. Every time it was an emergency. Every time it was just this once. And every time it became permanent. By the end of our first year together, I was paying her phone bill, her car insurance, and covering her rent gap almost every month. I sat down once and added it up, and in 12 months, I had given Simone just over $9,000 outside of normal relationship spending. $9,000. I make decent money as a welder, but I'm not rich. That $9,000 was my savings, my emergency fund, my future, and it was going to a woman who spent $400 on a handbag the same week she told me she couldn't afford groceries. That's when I started paying attention. Simone never had money for her bills, but she always had money for herself. New nails every 2 weeks, new clothes every weekend. She went out with her friends at least twice a week, and she never once suggested staying in because she was tight on cash. She just made sure I handled the boring stuff so she could spend on the fun stuff. I brought it up once. I told her I felt like I was carrying the financial weight of 2 people while she spent freely on things she wanted. She told me that as a man, it was my responsibility to take care of the household expenses and that her personal spending was her business. She said it like she was reciting a rule from a book I'd never read. I told her we didn't share a household. She said that was a technicality since she stayed at my place 5 nights a week. She ate my food, she used my electricity, she did her laundry at my place and watched my streaming accounts, but she kept her own apartment so she could say she was independent. The breaking point was her birthday. She told me 2 weeks in advance that she wanted a designer bag, not a nice bag, a specific one that cost $1,100. I told her that was out of my range. She said I could put it on a credit card. I told her I wasn't going into debt for a handbag. She got quiet, and then she said you spend money on tools and welding equipment without thinking twice, and you can't do this one thing for me. I told her my tools make me money. She said, and I don't. Like she was supposed to be an investment that paid off. I told her I needed to think about things. She said, think about what? I said, us. She said, there's nothing to think about. I said there was, and I'd talk to her in a few days. For those few days, I went through everything. Every transfer. Every payment I made on her behalf. Every time she told me she was short, and every time I found out she went shopping that same week. It wasn't occasional. It was constant. She spent on herself freely and sent me the bills for everything else. My buddy Court asked me how things were going with Simone, and I told him the truth. He asked me one question. He said if you stopped paying for her stuff tomorrow, would she stay? I couldn't answer him. That told me everything. I met Simone at a coffee shop on a Saturday and told her I was done. She asked why. I told her I felt like an ATM with a heartbeat and that I couldn't keep funding a lifestyle she refused to contribute to. She said I was being cheap. I said no, I was being clear. She asked if this was about the bag. I told her it wasn't about the bag. It was about $9,000 and a woman who never once offered to split a bill or pay me back or even say thank you for covering her rent. She said she thanked me all the time. I asked her to name one time. She went quiet. She stared at her coffee and then she looked up and said, I show my gratitude in other ways. I asked her what ways. She said by being there for me. I asked her when she had ever been there for me. When my truck broke down and I needed a ride to work for a week, she didn't offer once. When I had a sinus infection and couldn't get out of bed, she went out with her friends and didn't check on me until the next afternoon. When my grandmother died, she sent a text that said that sucks and then asked me an hour later if I could cover her gym membership. Being there. She said I was going to regret this because she was the best thing that ever happened to me. I told her the best thing that happened to me was making $62,000 last year and somehow ending the year with less in my account than when I started. She told me no one else would put up with my attitude. I told her no one else would need to because I wasn't going to date someone who saw me as a funding source. I paid for the coffee because old habits are hard to break. Then I left. In the first month after the breakup, I saved $1,400. That's how much was going to Simone every month. In 3 months, I rebuilt most of my emergency fund. I bought myself a new welding hood I'd been putting off for a year. 6 months later, Simone's name popped up on my phone. Not a call, but a payment request. She'd added me to a subscription service and charged my old card on file for $3,000. I stared at that notification for a long time. Not because I was surprised, because I wasn't. Because even after 6 months of no contact, this woman still saw my bank account as hers. That $3,000 was for some kind of premium wellness membership, a full year paid up front. She had signed up using my card number that she apparently saved from when I used to pay her phone bill through her online account. She knew my card details. She memorized them, or screenshotted them, or wrote them down at some point during our relationship, and she held on to that information like a key she planned to use later. I called my bank immediately. I reported the charge as unauthorized. The representative asked me if I knew the person who made the charge, and I said yes. She asked if I had ever given this person permission to use my card. I said I had given her access to pay a specific bill during our relationship, but that we were no longer together, and I had not authorized any charges in 6 months. She asked if I wanted to file a formal fraud complaint. I said yes. She transferred me to the fraud department. I spent 45 minutes on the phone going through every detail, the date of the charge, the merchant name, the amount, the last time I had any financial arrangement with Simone. They asked me if I had filed a police report, and I said not yet. They said I might need to, depending on how the dispute went. The bank flagged the transaction and began a dispute. They issued me a new card the the next day. I also went through every online account I could think of and removed my old card information. Her phone bill account that I used to pay through, a food delivery app she had logged into on my phone once and saved my payment, a rideshare account she'd linked during a night out when her phone died. Simone had threaded herself into my financial life like roots into concrete, quiet, gradual, almost invisible until you try to pull them out and realize how deep they go. Then I called Simone. She answered on the second ring like she'd been waiting. I told her I saw the charge. She said, "Oh, that." She said she figured I wouldn't mind since it was a health thing. I said, "You charged $3,000 to my card without asking me, without telling me, without us being in a relationship for 6 months." She said I always paid for her health stuff when we were together. I said, "We're not together." She said, "I know, but the card was already saved and it was easier." Easier. She didn't even bother with a story. She didn't claim it was an accident or a mistake or a glitch. She didn't say she was confused or thought she was using a different card. She said it was easier. Like my bank account was a convenience she kept in her back pocket for when she didn't feel like using her own. I told her the bank was disputing the charge and that what she did was fraud. She laughed. She actually laughed and said, "Don't be dramatic. It's not like I stole from you." I said, "That's exactly what you did." She said, "Fine, I'll pay you back." I said, "When?" She said, "When I can." That was the same line she used for 12 months while she spent my savings on handbags and brunch. When I can. I told her if the money wasn't returned within the dispute window, I was filing a police report. She got quiet. Then she said, "You would really do that to me over money?" I said, "You would really steal from me over a wellness membership." She hung up. The bank reversed the charge 11 days later. I didn't have to file the police report, but I kept the documentation. I saved every text. I saved the bank dispute paperwork. I saved the screenshots of the charge and the notification and the call log showing I contacted her about it. I saved everything because Simone taught me something in that relationship. She taught me that when someone shows you they see you as a resource, you should believe them, and you should also keep receipts. After the charge was reversed, I thought that would be the end of it. It wasn't. Simone started texting me, not about the money, about us. She said she missed me. She said she'd been thinking about what went wrong. She said she realized she took me for granted, and she wanted to try again. The messages came in waves. One week she would send 3 or 4 long texts about how she'd changed and how she was working on herself. The next week she would send short ones. "Just thinking about you," or "I drove past your shop today." Then nothing for 2 weeks. Then another burst. It was a cycle. She sent me a photo once of a meal she cooked. Captioned it, "Learning to take care of myself like you wanted." Another time she sent a screenshot of her bank app showing a savings account with $1,200 in it. She said, "See, I'm saving now." Like financial literacy was a performance she was putting on for an audience of one. Like the whole point of being responsible with money was to impress me enough to take her back so she could stop doing it. Court told me not to respond and I didn't. But I'd be lying if I said part of me didn't want to. Not because I missed the relationship, because I missed having someone to come home to after a 12-hour shift covered in slag and smelling like metal. I missed having someone in the passenger seat. I missed the weight of another person in the bed at night. I missed the sound of someone else's footsteps in the apartment. The loneliness was the hardest part, not the money. I got the money back. But the silence in my apartment at 8 o'clock on a Tuesday was something I had to learn to sit with. I had to teach myself that quiet doesn't mean empty, that being alone is not the same as being lonely, that the absence of someone who drains you is not a void, it's a clearing. 3 months after the card incident, Simone showed up at my shop. I do custom welding and fabrication out of a rented bay in an industrial park on the east side of town. She pulled up in a new car, not new to her, new. A white sedan with dealer plates still on it. She got out wearing an outfit that probably cost more than my monthly rent, and she walked into my shop like she owned it. I was in the middle of a staircase railing for a residential client. I had my hood down, and I was running a bead, and I didn't see her until I flipped the hood up and she was standing 6 feet away watching me. I asked her what she was doing here. She said she wanted to talk. I asked about what? She said about everything. I turned off the welder and set my gloves down and said talk. She said she got a new job, executive assistant at a real estate development firm. Good salary, benefits. She said she was doing better financially. She said she wanted me to know that she could take care of herself now and that if we got back together, things would be different. I asked her how she bought the car. She hesitated. Then she said her new boyfriend helped her with the down payment. I looked at her. I looked at the new car. I looked at the nails and the outfit and the fresh highlights in her hair. And I understood. Simone didn't come back because she missed me. She came back because whoever was paying her bills now wasn't paying enough of them. Or he was starting to ask questions the way I did. Or he set a boundary and she needed a backup plan. I was the backup plan. I was always the backup plan. Even when I was the main plan, I was still just a backup for the life she felt entitled to, but couldn't afford on her own. I said, "Simone, you have a boyfriend." She said it's complicated. I said it's not. You have someone else paying for things, and you're here because you want 2 sources instead of 1. She said that's not fair. I said $9,000 wasn't fair. $3,000 in unauthorized charges wasn't fair. Showing up at my workplace to pitch me on a second chance while your boyfriend's name is on your car loan isn't fair. I said, you know what the worst part is? You didn't come here with an apology. You didn't come here with a check. You came here with a pitch. The same pitch you gave me in month 3 when it was just an $80 phone bill. You showed up looking good and talking sweet and hoping I'd forget the math. But I'm a welder, Simone. I measure things for a living, and nothing you've said today adds up. She started crying. Not the kind of crying that means someone is hurt. The kind that means someone's strategy isn't working. I'd seen it before. Every time I pushed back on a bill or questioned a purchase, she would cry. Not because she was sad, but because crying had always worked on other people and she expected it to work on me. It used to. It didn't anymore. I told her she needed to leave. She said I was cold. I said I was clear. Same thing I told her at the coffee shop. She said she couldn't believe I was throwing away what we had. I said what we had cost me $9,000 $9,000 and a year of my life, and the only thing I got out of it was a lesson I should have learned sooner. She wiped her eyes and walked back to her new car and sat in the driver's seat for about 5 minutes before she drove away. I went back to the railing. The bead I'd been running before she showed up had cooled wrong, and I had to grind it down and start that section over. Even when she was leaving, she was still costing me time and money. That night, I sat in my apartment with the TV off, and I thought about something Simone said during the breakup conversation at the coffee shop. She said I was the best thing that ever happened to her, and maybe that was true. Maybe I was the best thing that happened to her because I was the most she ever extracted from a single person. I was the highest yield. I was the longest anyone had let her operate before catching on. But I also thought about what she didn't say. She never said she loved me, not at the coffee shop, not in any of the texts she sent after the breakup, not at my shop when she was standing there crying and asking for another chance. She said she missed me. She said things would be different. She said she realized what she lost, but she never once said, I love you, because love wasn't the product. I was. After that visit, I didn't hear from Simone for a long time, almost 4 months. During that stretch, I did something I should have done years ago. I started tracking every dollar I made and every dollar I spent. Not because I was worried about money, but because I wanted to see clearly what my life looked like without someone draining it. In 4 months, I saved almost $6,000. I could see it accumulating in my account like water filling a tank that used to have a hole in the bottom. The hole was patched now. The water stayed. I put a deposit on a larger shop space with room for a second welding bay. I bought a plasma cutter I'd been eyeing for 2 years. I invested in a proper ventilation system so I wasn't breathing fumes 8 hours a day. I got business cards made and set up a real website instead of the word-of-mouth operation I'd been running. I picked up a contract with a construction company that needed custom bracket work for a commercial build, and that one job alone was worth more than everything I'd made the month I was covering Simone's rent and insurance and phone and groceries and existence. Everything I earned went back into my work or my future. That's what money is supposed to do. It's supposed to build something, not evaporate. My buddy Court came by the new shop the week I moved in. He looked around at the equipment and the workspace and the jobs lined up on my whiteboard, and he said, "Brother, you look like a different person." I said I'm the same person. I just stopped spending like 2 of them. He helped me mount a tool rack on the wall, and we sat in lawn chairs in the bay door drinking water because it was 95 degrees out, and I didn't have AC in the shop yet. He asked if I'd heard from Simone. I told him about the visit. He shook his head. He said some people don't want a partner. They want a sponsor. He said his cousin went through the same thing. Dated a woman for 2 years who cried broke every month but took 3 vacations a year. She called him controlling when he asked her to contribute to the electricity bill. Court said the cousin finally left and the woman had a new boyfriend within 2 weeks. Same play, different audience. I thought about that for a while. Simone never wanted a relationship. She wanted a financial arrangement with emotional benefits. She wanted someone to cover the overhead of her life so that every dollar she earned was disposable income. She wanted the safety net without the obligation, the security without the reciprocity. And she framed it as what a man is supposed to do because that framing made it impossible to question without sounding like I didn't care. That's what made it work for as long as it did. Not her charm, not the relationship, the framing. She positioned her needs as my duty and my needs as optional, and I accepted that arrangement for 12 months because I confused being used with being needed. There's a difference. Being needed means someone can't do it without you because the task is too big or the moment is too hard. Being used means someone can do it without you but would rather not because you're cheaper than the alternative. Simone could have paid her own phone bill. She could have budgeted for her car insurance. She could have covered her rent every month if she skipped the nails and the brunch and the $400 handbag. She chose not to. She chose me instead. The last time I heard from Simone was 2 months ago. She sent a text that said, "I heard your business is doing well. Congratulations." No ask, no pitch, no can we talk, just congratulations. I read it and thought about responding. Not because I wanted to reconnect, but because part of me wanted her to know that the money she took from me was the best investment I ever made. That $9,000 bought me clarity. It bought me a boundary I'll never let anyone cross again. It bought me the knowledge that when someone asks for $80 in month 1, you should pay attention to what they're asking for in month 12. But I didn't respond. Not because I was angry. I just didn't have anything left to say to someone who only ever talked to me when she needed something. My shop is doing well. I hired a part-time helper last month, a kid fresh out of trade school who reminds me of myself 10 years ago. Eager, focused, willing to grind through the boring jobs because he understands they lead to the good ones. I've got more work than I can handle, and for the first time in years, my savings account has a number in it that I'm proud of. A number that stays because nobody is siphoning it off $80 at a time. I don't check Simone's social media. Court told me she and the boyfriend broke up. He told me she's been posting about how hard it is to find a good man. I didn't ask for details, and he didn't offer any. Last week, a client brought his daughter to pick up a custom fire pit I built for their backyard. She was maybe 8 or 9 years old, and she watched me grind the final edge smooth, and she asked me how hot the metal gets. I told her. She asked how I learned to do it. I told her I went to trade school and practiced for years. She said that's cool. Her dad paid the invoice in full on the spot and shook my hand and thanked me for the quality of the work. No negotiating. No, I'll pay you when I can. No $80 short this month. Just a man who received something of value and paid what it was worth without being asked twice. I stood in my shop after they left holding that check, and I thought about Simone telling me I spend money on tools without thinking twice. She was right about that. I do spend money on my tools without thinking twice because every dollar I put into this shop comes back. Every piece of equipment earns its keep. Every tool has a purpose, and that purpose is to build something that lasts. Simone never built anything. She just spent what other people earned and called it love.